So today we're going to be painting in watercolor this apple. I think I'm going to rearrange it a little bit so I can see the other back side and the front side, and I don't think that seed looks good there. So I'll throw it there. So this watercolor paper comes in this field artist book, and you get the loose sheets like this, and you can see where I already painted a shell, and that goes in like that. So it's super when you want to carry it around. And I'm doing the Windsor Newton, these little travel watercolors. Let me get that open. Well, I'll get this open. Okay, there we go. And it comes with a brush, but I use my own brushes. So that's what we're using today to create the apple. And I'll probably just stick the apples in here because I have such a small piece of paper. I won't put the plate in. So it's just a study to do the watercolor. So I'm going to be using this set of watercolor, or actually the acrylics can be used as, I did many acrylic paintings with these brushes. So I'm going to do a number 2 and probably a 1. I think this is a 1. No, this is 0. And laying out some of it in like the number 5. So, and we'll get started by quickly just sketching the apple pieces out. And I'm not going to do the plate, so I'm just going to do a light sketching. So I'm just looking for shapes. So we'll come like this. And look how lightly I'm drawing. I'm drawing really lightly. This is coming sideways to me, so I want to keep this appearing sideways. So this piece is a little bit higher than the back piece. I gotta lower that a little bit, and this comes a little higher and then comes back down. My dog Max is here in the studio today. So I'm gonna come like this. I'll split this in half so that I have it equal. Bring this back here. This piece comes around like this, and I'll just give myself a little point of view. When I'm sketching, I will change things as I see them. The perspective will change in my sketches, so that's why you're using a lot of different lines and when you're sketching, so you find the best one for you. The stem comes up like this. So I get this, and this widens out a little bit more like that, and then comes back here. So there's the beginning of the bigger piece of the apple, and then the other two on right here. So I'll just go like this. And I'm just looking for shapes again to bring this around. This kind of goes like that. And it's cut kind of raggedy. It's not even on the side, so I'll show that. Comes out like this. And this littler piece, this is just a study to really practice. But I still like when I practice to do things, you know, pretty realistically. And this just has a little skin showing, doesn't have a lot of skin showing. And then I'm going to put the shadows in because I like adding shadows because that adds to the interest of the painting. So I'm going to start this painting with the number 5. Get water and do yellow. I'm just going to do a light wash of yellow on the entire thing. And that's a little too much paint, so I can take that and just move it around. There's probably too much graphite left in the paint, the actual drawing, so I might take some of that away. I should have drawn it in like a yellow pencil. That would have been more helpful. Okay, so I'm just doing this whole wash on everything. Okay. And you can see I use the water to just move the paint around because I just want to wash on it. So it sort of just starts the beginning of the painting. I always do paintings like this. I start with yellow on almost any painting I do because I really think it pushes the colors to be more vibrant, especially in acrylic. I really do it the most in acrylic. I haven't painted a lot in watercolor in a really long time, but it's an enjoyable medium. It's not as forgiving as like an acrylic where you can paint over and over on acrylic, and same thing with oils. You can paint over and over on them, and correct things that you don't like. So watercolor, you kind of have to make choices ahead of time on how you're going to want them. So there you can see I got the beginning of the painting with the watercolor wash. Now you can work wet. You don't really have to wait. Just going to put a little bit more yellow in here and just pull it around. And then just using the brush to move it to different places, because when you cut the apple, as you know, it turns yellow pretty quickly. So there's areas that are going to retain the yellow more so than others, and there's really no white on this apple. Okay, so now I'm going to go for the red. I have a red and a bright, like kind of like an orangey red. So I'm going to mix those together and just start to put in, just going across with this shape. I've got the stem there. Actually, you can put that red. I should have actually put yellow on that as well, but it won't really matter. So I'm going to put that in and then just move this around like this and just move it around. You can see a little bit of the color running. It's okay, because I'll straighten that out later. Just bring this around. And that'll dry up a little bit. It dries fairly quickly, and I have 3 lights on, so I'm just going to take that red and use what's on my brush and come around the edge here, because the skin would be on it, and you would see that on the edge like that. Okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to, same thing here, just bring a little bit of the red around. My dog is snoring. I can tell he really likes being in here. Okay, so I'm just going to bring that red all the way around this. So I'm going to put a little bit over where the seeds are and where it's starting to really turn. I mean, I just literally cut this apple before I sat down to paint, and it's turned so quickly. So I'm just starting to do a few little washes in to like show that it's turning. So I'm going to take a little bit of paper towel, and I can pull away some of that coloring, like do the wash but yet pull away some of it, so you're letting the washes do some of the work. So as you can see, I'm going around the entire painting doing washes, because that's the best way to paint anything, is especially on something like a watercolor. You want to go and take your time and do the washes so that you get all these nice little build up of color. Okay, so now, and as you can see, I bring the paint into the apple, like there's a little bit of a point right there, and that helps to delineate the apple coming into itself where it was cut. Okay, so right here, again, this is where the seeds are held. It's making a, the color change, so I'm going to do that. So while that's drying, I'm going to add a little bit of the green, because it does have green in the apple, and I'll just blot a little bit off on my paper and come down in here. This is the beginning of where the green would show into this little piece here, and some on the stem. So I'll start my washes like that. Now the green's gonna also come into some of the little veins that are shooting out from inside the apple. So I'll just put that in and then blot a little, going slow but sure on building up color. So you could see this would be a beginning class where you could see the step-by-step, where we actually do things slowly but surely, and you'll finish the whole painting in the steps. So it's like anything else, you're going to take your time and do the slow build up of everything. So I'm putting more green coming up towards the center. There's a seed right in there, there's a couple seeds, and I'm just going to do that. And I'm using what's on my brush. Okay, and I'm going to move on to this part of the apple and put a wash right here. And there's a wash right underneath there. So you can see I'm moving on the entire painting instead of just focusing on one space, or one place, I should say. Okay. And there's a little piece of green that comes around like this. You know, this painting is going to be, you know, a little understated. I'm not going to go into like a photorealism with this because it's not my style. I'm more like a, you know, more stylized with an impression. I don't know what you'd say my style is, but it's bold, pretty bold. But right on this with the watercolor, it won't be too bold because I'm just going to use it like a more of a simple look today. Okay, so I'm coming around, just keep adding colors. Now I'm going to go in and get some of this ochre color. It's like a little, let me show you, this like little wheat looking color, and just start putting in some things like this. So I'm just going to go lightly. I put a little spot of color and take the water and pull it back out. So you can put something bold in like that, and then use your water as a tool too. See, so I put that in there, and I use my water to pull the color, and then, you know, wash it off a little bit of the color onto my paper towel. So the paper towel is also a tool. Okay, so you get that going there. So now I'm going to come back and adding a lot more color because it's just really turning a darker browny color right in here. But I don't really want to introduce brown. I'd like to use colors because then it adds to like a more bold look. So just bring it around and let it sort of explode like that. Okay. And I'm just adding some of this other color like this. Okay, so that same like an ochre color, which is like a wheat yellowy color, I'm gonna start to add into this color, which is where the apple is starting to turn. So I put the color in there, and I might just wipe it a little bit away, and just letting the brush and water and whatnot be work towards that buildup. It's pretty fun when you work with watercolor because you know, you're having to figure out how much you can get away with to keep it still looking really soft. You know, I've seen watercolors really bold, like an acrylic painting. I'm not going to do that in this painting. I'm just going to stay with these little washes until I build it up to where I like it, and I see it as this apple study. As I said, I'm not putting it on a plate. I'm just going to throw some shadows underneath that, which is a good time to add those shadows now. I'm going to check what we have for colors. It's not the right color. I think I'm going to do a blue and red. So I'm going to put a little blue. It's a little bright. Right in here. And this shadow kind of like goes out off around and comes behind it. It just really looks nice when you start to add shadows. I think it really makes it like sort of look enjoyable to look at, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just gonna do these right now. You can see how fast paint really works opposed to when you draw. Drawing takes a lot longer to achieve what we're doing in, you know, a quick few strokes. I'm just going to put that little shadow because it's setting on the back side of the plate right behind here, so it's really lighter. And you could wash this out a little bit if you thought it was too dark, but I think it looks good, and then I might add a little red to that. But right now I'm just going to stay with the blue, and I'm coming back to add more red to this color, and I think I'm going to do 2 reds. See how that starts to get more bold. And what you could do is like blot out some of the little circles that are on the apple. And what I do is I just sort of do this kind of a thing and make them kind of random. And they kind of come off the hair as well. So and then you paint around them. That's what would make sense. Okay, so you do a few more, and then I would paint around these. So go like this. Do a couple more. And so what you're doing by there is you're adding the color that we put underneath, or the wash, as those little specks, and I'll just build the red around this. Okay, like this. Okay, so there we go. Just come back around like this. And then just add the color around it. So it does take a little time to build the washes up, but you can see we already got the little specks in, which I didn't want to add paint for that, so that's pre-planning to add the little specks from the previous wash. And then you're inferencing this. It's again, it's not a photorealistic painting for me, at least. It's not my style. Okay. Right, so we have that, so we can bring the paint all the way up to those specks and just keep adding the color because it's very intense, a skin color. And it takes a little bit of patience to go around those little dots because they're starting to fill in where I left them fairly on the good size. I can see that they're starting to fill in a bit, but a couple of them will make it look like the apple. Okay, and I'm just going to go in here and do this kind of a thing. And you can see I'm adding the darker color on the wet part. So let's see, I want to see if I can try to pull a little bit out of here because there is a light area there where it has a little bit lighter coming in the center here. Yeah, it's not as easy when you already let it get too, it got too far along as far as drawing. Let's see. I'm gonna mix that over here, bring these over. I should have cleaned that tray. And I'm gonna grab a little blue because I want it a little bit darker. So you notice I'm adding blue to the red, and I'm just gonna actually go into the stem and do some work. And it gives it a depth. I have that little color, that weedy color that's in there already, which I'm good with leaving a lot of it there. And I'm gonna add a green to the opposite side. So we have that there. And let's add while we have that on the brush and come down here. This area is starting to get really darker where it's been sitting out now. And I'm gonna put this seed in here, this little seed that's got the white showing, or you can see where I cut it in half. So it's outlined like that. And I'm gonna take a little bit of the paint off and then use the water. You actually even borrow that paint from there. What I do is oftentimes I'll just take paint from another spot, like this if I want it lighter, and just use that to move it around, like just get some of this out of here like that. Come like this. Okay. Okay, let me add a little green here. Okay. Just going to start to add you can see I'm starting to add the layers of color. And and you can see how slowly I went to put everything in, even though there's a lot going on. It's easier to go slowly and add something than it is to take it away. So a little piece of a seed right there. Okay, now the apple is really turning quite a bit of color on all of the areas. And you really want to inference that too. I think the more buildup of color it has, that'll be interesting to look at. So I'm just going to go back in there and I'm going to start adding the color, especially on the edges. By pushing the paint along the edges, it'll make this look brighter on the inside of it. So this part has a lot more brightness, but this part doesn't. So what I'm going to do is, and it'll push this over like this. Let me just go up here like this. And I'm going to go across like that. Come up like this. And start really adding the dark parts. And you can see the apple has multiple colors inside of it. So that's the fun part. It was where you could leave areas that are not quite as bright red or dark red, because there's right along the cut line, it's very deep in the color. So just keep adding on to that. And you'll be able to figure out if you're getting too dark or you don't like how dark it's getting. Remember, you're the person that's showing the viewer the painting. So how you depict it, unless they watched you paint it, is how they're going to see it. So you could change this to be a totally green apple, and they wouldn't know because they weren't there. And I like doing all these little washes. It is fun. Okay, so I'm gonna let that dry and go with what's on my paintbrush and start adding some more in here. This piece is really dark right in here of the red. I'll let that go like that. And it comes up here like this. Okay, like that. Add this to here. And I'm just going to bring this a little bit around like this to there. That'll start to dry. And then I'll keep going around and adding to it. So I'm going to add a little bit more work to where this seed area would be. And just do little washes right there like that. And I'll move back over to here and do some more work here. Now there's a seed on the plate. It's just a little half a seed because it's been cut in half. It's probably the other half of this seed. So I'm just going to, part of me doesn't want to put it there because it looks a little contrived sitting there, but it is there, so I'm gonna put it in there. So that's the beginning of the wash. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more to this inside part. That burst that came in the original burst kind of really adds to the look of the apple, so I'm gonna leave that alone. I think I'm gonna just do this as a complete watercolor. I was gonna add watercolor pencils, but I think this is really fine on its own, just using the washes and the different things, the details that we're achieving by that, just the, adding the details by painting it. So now I'm just going to keep building up on this center part where it goes like right in here, so you can see where it kind of like is just coming outwards, and the colors are really changing to be darker. Add more of this brownie color, the wheat color. Now I added that as a more solid color, and I'm just going to pull it out using the brush just lightly. So you just sort of do it slowly, and I'll leave this undone, like just leave that there. I won't continue that, but I will add more color like right in here. And so there's a little bit more color coming inward here, and we'll just do a little bit of wash like that. I'm going to add more right in here too. So what you just like to sort of do is introduce that color and let it like sort of dry in you know, like dry in here like this. Okay. All right, so I got that. I'm going to do a little bit of a wash here. Come like that. And a little bit more like this. So I've got that going on. Right, so now let's let that dry and put some more work in the shadows here. So just going underneath there. I must have picked up black. I didn't think I had black. I don't really want black in here. It's not really my thing to use it. So you can see the red of the paint. I'm going to skip over that. I don't really like that look. I like using color when I do any shading or putting in shadows, because if you notice the color is more softer and yet has a more bold, intense look without being overbearing, like when I put the blue down and I do a little bit of a red wash on there. Bring back in that red and kind of go underneath that a little bit. Now I don't want it to compete with the apple because I still want the apple to be on its own. But the color of the apple on the white plate would cast a little bit of red into the reflection, so that would totally be there. So I'm doing like a little bit of a wash that comes out a little bit here. And this is really quite dark underneath here. Oops, got the wrong color. Right here it gets super dark. Like that. And I'm bringing some of that blue into the stem. I think I'll bring it into here. I kind of like that blue in there. It kind of is adding a nice balance to the ochre color, that wheat color, and the red. I think it adds a nice look. So I'm just going to bring some of this around the edge here. And then I'll keep building the reds because I really want this to be really dark on this part of the apple and lighter in here. So you can achieve that by bringing the lightness or the other color away out of that like area. So you're just pulling that color like that. And just do this like, oops. And just keep adding more color like that. And I added that little thin line. I think that is nice because then that adds to the skin color on there. There's a little point that comes right here and then it comes back around. So I'm going to start like working on this skin color. It's got a lot more red, like right coming off of here, but the green is really right up to it, but I still can pull a little bit of red through there. Add a little bit more to this. You can see that comes a little bit of a point up here. Just let that sit for a while and add a little bit to here. So I'm going to add on this side because this has got a shadow on this side. I'm going to take a little bit of the green and add it to a little bit of this color here, which is like a purpley blue. And I'm just going to wash it right on this side, right across the whole thing, but only on that side. So now I've created a light source that we know the light is coming and hitting here. By putting that shadow on there, it takes away that it's all one light source. So and it's not. So on this side, we also would take away and put a shadow on this side too, because there's that as well. So I don't want it 100% like that. I kind of want this to like build up to being lighter, and then take that away like that. Now I'm going to do a few more things to, while these are drying, to these shadows. I'm going to do that red again with the blue. And just, I need this to be really dark right in here. It's still wet, so there's a little bit of a burst going on there, which is good in a way because it keeps it from getting overly dark, or one area overly dark, so it kind of like softens it. So I'm just going to do that. Same here, it's really dark right under here. Just keep doing that. I mean, you could stop this now. You could kind of tell that it's already a cut apple, but I kind of want to go a little further. I want to do a little bit more detail, like put a little bit more of this seed in here. There's like that seed going on in there. And I'm going to take the blue on top of that ochre color and do that. Outline more of this. Do more of the stem work here. Right like that. And keep going around adding the details to this outside of the apple, because I think that's pretty much where I want to go next, is do a little more detail on that. These just have a little bit more detail, and then I would leave it alone, because I think this being so dark, you kind of want to leave these still light. It's kind of like the style I want is to keep it more of a impressionist style, where it's, you can tell what it is, but your eye starts to fill in the difference. We just do a little bit more shading underneath here. I want a real dark shadow right under this apple where I have to get like some really solid color. I'm gonna take this blue, get that red, it'll get darker, and go right here. And then just pops out a little bit really like this. Goes right back in. Which I really like this a lot when I see these like double and triple shadows. So that dark shadow and then the lighter shadow and then the lighter shadows. That's, you know, interesting to me. This one is going to also have a little bit of an extra shadow where it goes right underneath it. And then just comes out a little bit. And you notice there's no black here. I did grab like what I think is a black earlier, and it's not my thing to do that. Oops. This is just softer of the buildup, and it doesn't add to. I don't like too dark, where you're tempted with the black to overpower everything. I'm coming like here by putting in this shadow in here, like coming really intensely right underneath it where it's setting like on the back of this plate. I'm just bringing it like just up to there and stopping, and just bring this around like that. I think that adds to like an interest, and then I'll just take the water and pull it back around. And let that just sit. Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit more on this seed. Using the white of the paper for the seed itself, so I'm just letting that like do that kind of a thing. Now I'm just gonna, to finish up, I'm just going to keep building up on this red, and I think that'll finish it up nicely, because these are pretty good. Maybe just a few more while I have red in here. I'm adding like a little streaky look to it, so it adds a little nice look to that. Just go and outline a little. Oops, it's a little bit much. I had every intentions of using this is a number 5, of using a thinner brush for the more details, but if you go slowly, you can kind of achieve by using the point of the brush, like a thinner, more detailed look. So I'm just going to add the rest of these colors and tie up this painting. I like the build up because now I'm going in for solid color and using less and less water in my brush. Like I'll have to go right now and get a little water, but I could do it, put it to the side or take some of it off and then just keep adding more solid color into this painting, and I think it will add like a much needed depth to the skin. So just keep coming around like this. And you could see that it has the little layers of color by adding it like that. Watercolor is, you know, enjoyable, and you can make it as hard as you want for yourself. People always say it's like the hardest medium to work in, probably because you can't like do the correcting that you can do with the other acrylic and gouache. Even gouache, you could do a correction because it's more solid and opaque, but in acrylic you can do some correcting. But I think it's a lot of fun to build up the colors, you know, and use these washes as part of the intrigue in this build up. So I'm just going to bring this out a little bit further. It's almost there. I'm going to add a little bit of blue with this red. I have to clean this pan. You just take water and a paper towel and you can clean everything because I got it a little bit messy. Okay, so I'm going to just bring some of this color here, just on the edge there. Okay, and then bring it like into the center here. So there we go. I just want a little bit of that dark, and back here, because you can see there's a depth of dark color in the back too, so I don't want to neglect that. See if I can stick some green in here. There's a little bit of green. The center of my apple, let me just add a few more little thin lines with paint that's on my brush, because now with it turning so much, there's all these little striations of color that are pulling through, and I think that's really neat, where you could add to that and it will make it look more interesting, and the colors are just like bursting all around the edges. It's the air really pulling this color to like turn the apple brown. Okay, just a little bit more and I think I'll be done. Just keep coming around with the color. And what you can do is come back later on when you're painting and look at the painting with a different eye, and see, of course, with the apple, that it's live. It's going to, you could photograph it and use the photograph to go off of. It's fun to paint something, you know, like still life-ish like this while it's, you know, right in front of you. I think there's something exciting about that. But you could photograph it and go back and look at it and paint more on it later, which I always think gives you a new set of eyes when you go back and look at something. Okay, so we have that. I'm just going to go like that, add more color, and I want the stem to really set in there. Okay. Using what's on my brush to finish up some more of the darker areas. Bring some of this in here too. Just want the apple to come out like a little bit further out like this. So I need to add on to that. I'm just going to do it a light wash, so it just extends itself out like this. And same with here. I'm just going to let that come into itself, so I'm not going to mess with that too much. Okay. I think it does have that. I'd like to add a little more green right in here, and I think the green would add a little bit of interest instead of just having all red and yellow in that wheat color. So I'm just going to add the green. Just coming like right on the edge here, and just using it to pull itself around like this. So now I have that going on like that. Just sort of pull it around like this. And just now going around to see what I need to do, and I think I really want to add a little more green to the end. It just adds a nice little pop. And just add this here. Okay. And a little bit more detail right in here. Just a tiny little bit right in here. This just needs a little bit of color so that it's not all one tone. Same here, I'm just gonna put a little bit of color right there. And I think it's good. So what this turns out to be is like more like a study, although it's a painting too. I think it adds, you know, I'm going to continue to add on to things, because the more you look at things, you'll see details that weren't there when you originally looked, and that's what's fun about painting. So that's great. So I see a pencil mark that could really be gone, and if you notice, the pencil went away, and I really should have maybe drawn it out with a watercolor pencil, which would have just, you know, gone away as well. But you can't really see too much of the pencil on there. There's a little bit of it right in the shadows, but I don't think it adds too much. So I think that's pretty good for our watercolor study today, and you got to work with me in that medium. So thanks for coming, and subscribe, like, and I'll see you soon. Bye.